episode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into, in Warrior Flow, how we use our elbows. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there where people are using their elbows and they're showing different techniques, and it's actually all good stuff. But the thing that distinguishes Warrior Flow and how we use the elbows versus what other people are doing is we're not throwing elbows or using them kind of like as just a technique. And what I mean by that is when we're using our elbows, first of all, your elbow has a lot of sensitivity, a lot more sensitivity than people think. So in Warrior Flow, because basically we're feeling our way through the fight, because you can feel faster than another person can move. Once you train yourself to move the right way, you can make these adjustments without thought, you know, at the speed of light, so to speak. So when we're using our elbows, and I go over this in the Down and Dirty course, we try to keep our hands relaxed as possible. And the reason we try to keep our hands relaxed is if I'm throwing an elbow, and you see this in a lot of different arts where people make the fist and they're throwing the elbow, and you can even try this on your own. What happens is as you're throwing that elbow, because your fist is tight, it actually starts pulling on the other muscles and creates this kind of antagonistic muscle in your body. And that actually puts the brakes and slows down your action. So you don't want to do that. Your elbow, because it's already just one big bone, you know, attached to, it's the humerus bone. It's already a preformed weapon, just like your knee. You don't have to do anything special. You just need to position your body the right way. So when we're using elbows in Warrior Flow, we try to keep our hands relaxed also because we want to use our hands as well. We don't want to just, be throwing elbows to be throwing elbows, because we do different things with our elbows. We do different things with our hands. We don't do anything in isolation. So for example, if I'm pushing his hand here, and let's say he feels me trying to control, simply because he can feel the direction I'm trying to push, as his arm comes up, what he's doing is he's now manipulating what's going on here because he can feel what I'm doing. But notice how his elbow comes up, and notice he puts his elbow right in my face. Now some people say, well, I'll do this, I'll do that. The problem with that is if I'm pushing and I'm coming in at speed with intention, that's a very hard thing to feel. For anyone who's wrestled, you know what I'm talking about. Catching elbows and knees in wrestling, in really any grappling art, it's an occupational hazard, right? So you just understand that, catching an elbow where a person's intentionally trying to take your head off is not a, good thing for you. It's just not a positive experience. So when I'm using elbows, I like to make sure that I'm positioning my body first to make the elbow work. And the reason is the elbow also has a limited reach. The elbow is a nice close-in weapon. So as he's using his elbows on me, notice how close he stays to my body. The reason is because the elbow only has so much range. But also notice as he's using the elbow, he's stepping in with his body on me. The reason you want to step in is because you don't want to get into this habit, and I see this in some of the heathen schools, where they throw these elbows like from Mississippi, and then the guy moves out of the way, and they get off balance, and then they miss, and they can't recover fast enough. For our money, it's unrealistic to think you're always going to, get the perfect shot. So if I'm throwing an elbow, I'll do it from this direction. And let's say he leans out of the way and I miss. Because I'm not overcommitting and because I'm stepping with it, I have time in most cases to adjust my body. The other thing we do with the elbows is we use our elbows not just as a weapon in Warrior Flow, but as a tool. So say for example, I have a person's arm, or they're moving with their hands like a boxer, and they're trying to keep their elbows up. I will use my elbows to also clear their hands or clear their arms. And I will hit them with everything I got, with every intention of busting their arms up and breaking their arm. If I'm clashing elbow to elbow, I try as best as possible, because I can feel what's going on. I try not to clash bone on bone. No sense in injuring your own elbow, but I'm trying to also do damage to the soft tissue. I mean, if I clash the bone, that's just the way it is. It's a real fight, sorry, get over yourself, man up. As we're using our elbows, what happens is the more you practice this, the more you start learning how to feel your way through. So for example, if I'm trying to control Frank, every time his elbows come up, because the elbow is already, like I said before, a preformed weapon, it's like somebody swinging a little baseball bat at you all the time. Even if I put my hand up to try to block it, it's going right through. I see people all the time say, well, I just blocked the elbow. Good luck with that. The reality is me putting my hand on his elbow, all this is doing is cushioning his elbow, and he's just going to drive my hand into my face, and that actually feels pretty good on your arm, right? It's almost like this was made for your elbow. Continue, right? And you get nailed. So me, because I know how devastating elbows can be, I'm always trying to get out of the way. I just let it go. If I feel like it's going to come back, I try to slip in and end it as quickly as possible. I'm not playing that game. If I feel that I can't get out of the way in time, then I'm going to bring my shoulder up, and I'm going to try to at least, keep it from hitting me in the neck or hitting me in the side of the head. The reality is that I can do like a whole video series on just how to use the elbow. Your elbow, once you learn how to use your elbows like a second pair of hands and not just as a weapon, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. I'll just go slowly so people see horizontal elbows back and forth. I can bring it kind of diagonally, vertically, all the kinds of stuff. I can even throw it, push out of the way, hit, whatever I want to do. The key is that you got to practice moving like that. You got to practice doing those things with your elbow. And one of the ways you can practice this, my friend, is even on like a heavy bag. I should go over this in the Down and Dirty course, where I hit back and forth with the elbows, just getting used to really learning how to position my body, even vertical elbows, keeping the hand relaxed, bringing the elbow up, protecting the head, even moving like a boxer. The idea is getting comfortable with moving in here with my elbows up, but also using my elbows. Notice as I'm moving in here, my body is kind of changing position, my body's kind of moving. I don't want to be stiff like, I'm doing the robot or something, because in a real fight, you may have to get that arm up, and you may have to like kind of pinch it off with the shoulder coming up to protect your head or protect your neck. One of the things I practice a lot with my elbows, and to keep it fresh, is I use my reaction bag. I don't just use the heavy bag. Now, the problem with the reaction bag is it moves very fast, so you got to kind of use some common sense. I always like to bring my bag up right around where my face is, so that it makes sure it can hit me in the face. So it causes me to have to always pay attention to what's going on. So as I'm using my elbow here, all I'm doing is slipping, sliding around, concentrating on really feeling and sticking with this to learn how to develop these muscles in here, so that when I need, for example, to slip my elbow around if I want to hit, I can hit from these different angles, because it teaches me how to anticipate the motion of the bag. Most people think, oh, they're just going to come up and just wail on it. I don't do that. Because again, if you got a hammer, how good you got to be. You got a baseball, how good you got to be. So I know my elbow will be effective if I'm hitting someone, especially if I'm catching them in the head side of the head. You see this in, MMA all the time. People get caught with an elbow, and it just cuts people's heads wide open, or it cuts their head wide open. Half the time, they don't even know that their face has been split open. That's just how effective the elbows can be. And this is just something you can practice on your own and get good at. Then, of course, adding your hands to it. And then, of course, later on, probably adding other types of strikes. But what you want to do is you want to become so comfortable with using your elbows that it becomes second nature. So when you practice with your friends and you're using the elbows, there's a million things you can do. The key is, I recommend, if you're going to practice, especially with a training partner, that you start slow, because it's like inherently dangerous. And as you're moving and you start slow, get comfortable with being in close, feeling your way through, and using the elbows, slipping them around, bringing the elbows around, pushing the arms out of the way, using your elbows as creatively as possible to help develop those muscles in the upper part of the torso, but also so that you start getting this kind of subtle muscle control to be able to use your elbows more effectively. Like I said, there's a million things you can do with the elbow. Me personally, I keep my strikes basic. I'm either throwing it, vertically, horizontally, or I'm coming down diagonally. I'm just keeping it simple. I'll bring it back, I'll bring it forward. I'll do all kinds of stuff. Sometimes I'll just step in and I'll just use the elbow, kind of like what Grandmaster Perkins used to do, where he would be protecting his head, or what he called answering the phone and bringing that elbow in and use it just like a battering ram.